Why they haunt? Why they haunt? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah, yeah.
It grows on me.
Yeah.
It's growing on me.
And it should, because it sticks in your head. And like, if you're going to brand yourself, you might as well brand yourself with something that sticks in your head. I mean, I sing that song all day long, and then I sing it to my dogs, you know, so I hear you.
Yeah.
So I think we got something. I don't know how, but we do.
Whoever would have thunk that Dalen could be a music producer?
Well, I did, you know.
Thank you for believing in me, Mark.
But I stereotyped as well. So just keeping it real. I stereotyped. Yeah.
That you did.
Yeah, just keeping it real. But look, I want to show you something.
Ooh. Please show that to them.
Yeah. So, the whole audio not hearing me, it's hilarious because I'm probably the loudest person that you will ever meet. Just ask my wife. She can't stand it because I talk so loud and embarrass her in public all the time. I even embarrass her at home because she thinks the neighbors can hear me. I'm so loud. So the fact that nobody could hear me, it's just the most ironic thing ever.
But they should know that this should let them know and show to them that we listen. We, their complaints, their concerns, we take them into consideration ASAP. We make changes. We make changes immediately. Like they are our shareholders, and we listen.
Absolutely. And the ones that made fun of my white headphones, look, gone. I'm here.
Thank you. Because I've been trying to get him to get rid of those for the longest. So whoever commented that and made him feel insecure about his call center headphones. Thank you. But
all the comments, for the most part, have been positive. And I'm grateful. It makes me feel good. How do you feel?
Man, I feel like we're really on to something, man. Like I feel like we're venturing into new uncharted territories with this whole immersive experience that we're creating.
Yeah, because it's real time investigating, and it's true crime. It's paranormal. It's never been done. And
we're taking you across two forms of media. You got a podcast that you're listening to now, and then you have a fully immersive investigative episode. Right. Like, who's doing that? Who's doing that, bro?
I am right now.
And you and me.
Oh, yeah. And you. Both of us. I
really feel like if you give us about 2 weeks and we're going to start winning awards. When's award season? Has it already passed?
It's summer, so it's a little slow, but it picks up in the fall and it goes all the way. It takes a vacation.
Gotcha.
But then when school comes back, it gets back into school. But then it takes another vacation for the holidays, and then you'll right in January and February, pow. So we have time to really
build some momentum.
Yeah.
So before we start, and we're going to get right into the episode because a lot of y'all told us we talk too much beforehand, and whatever. Maybe we do, maybe we don't.
I thought we were funny and entertaining.
I did. Yeah. Listen, I thought it was hilarious. But no, y'all, we got in trouble.
Yeah.
We thought we were doing the Lord's work, and apparently YouTube don't like the Lord.
Wait, can we say, I better check my list to make sure we can say the word Lord.
We got to make sure you can say Lord. Apparently, y'all, there's a list of words that will get you demonetized on YouTube. So we have to be respectful to the YouTube suits and make sure that we don't say certain words. So at times you may hear us talking around certain words, and it may be kind of awkward at first, but just bear with us, y'all. It's like learning a new language all over again.
Yeah, we're going to have to speak YouTube. And there is one word in particular that was very sensitive, and you and I approach this word sensitively. So it's not like, and in the end, it turned out that our friend Birdie, our beloved friend Birdie, by the way, she has become a part of the family at this point. She is a shifter for sure. We concluded that she did not do this word. So I think you can understand at home
Right.
what this S word is.
Birdie did not unalive herself.
That's a good way of putting it.
I think that's a decent way to put it.
I hope.
I do too.
It's one of those we're going to find out one way or the other. And this is the scary part of AI technology, is because they're literally getting AI bots to censor these words and then demonetize you. And there's not even a human doing it. It's a robot that is demonetizing us. So
what makes that horrible is because they fail to identify context.
Right.
So they're just listening for buzzwords.
Right.
But they're not hearing the context in which we're discussing said buzzwords.
Right. Because I feel like a human watches that, they would say, okay, yeah, big deal. They said it, but that's, the trial, the history of the whole story was that's what she did, which we proved she didn't.
She did not.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, so we were doing a good thing.
We're literally true detectives, man. But I'm excited. Yeah. I'm excited about this week. This week, what do you have for us, man? What do you have for us? Where are we going? Who are we investigating? What's the story, Mark?
Oh man, we're keeping it in the Smoky Row area. If you remember Smoky Row, that's the area of Nashville, the first 4 blocks from the river. So as you get off the boats and the steam from the steamers is still blowing off the river, you enter Smoky Row, which is a seedy underbelly, really nasty part of town full of saloons, gambling halls. Also, the P word was a buzzword. I don't know if that's what got us. What?
Pop locking?
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Gotcha.
So the houses of ladies. So there's us dancing around stuff, but that's what Smoky Row is full of. But we're actually going to go to the end of Smoky Row, which is the 4th block, which was actually named Cherry Street, if you can believe that. Yeah, Cherry Street, as in popping a cherry. Beep. YouTube.
That's definitely going to get demonetized. We're gonna have to bleep that one out.
yeah, Cherry. So we're going to Cherry Street, and actually the nickname for Cherry Street was the men's quarter. Like the gentleman's quarter. Gotcha. This was for the high end men to go to, and no women were actually be caught dead there because this was for the men only. It's like a little boys club, but a block of it.
Why would it be in the seedy part of town though? You would think the upscale gentleman would want to not be seen in that type of area.
Yeah,
if they were going to frequent those type of spots.
Yeah, well, they needed a place too, and so Nashville was during Reconstruction became a place for entrepreneurs to come and grow businesses and know how to make money. And then right on Cherry Street, they built this luxurious hotel actually during the Civil War, which was actually used as a Civil War prison for Confederate soldiers. Oh, wow. And it was called the Maxwell House. And I've mentioned this before, but the Maxwell House was the most prominent, nicest hotel in all of the South, because at this point, Atlanta was destroyed. So Nashville was it was a railroad town and a river town. And so the transportation in and out Nashville, to go to the west or to go to the northeast or even to go down to Atlanta, you went through Nashville. And if you were a prominent businessman, you stayed at the Maxwell House. And then when you walked out of the Maxwell House, you saw the end of Smoky Row. So at this point, money was being poured into Cherry Street to make Smoky Row look a little more presentable. And so that part of Smoky Row, Cherry Street, which is now 4th Avenue. So it no longer is called Cherry Street in Nashville. So if you go to Nashville and you're on 4th Avenue between Church and Union, this was known as the men's quarter of Nashville. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's probably the most haunted block in all of Nashville. And then there's
Really?
alleys that go. There's alleys that go behind the buildings and then on the side of the buildings, and all of those alleys are probably literally the most haunted alleys in the South for sure.
Like, who would have ever thunk that Nashville, you know what I mean, home of like such beautiful music, food, culture, people, has like this seething paranormal history that just runs rampant through the downtown?
Well, it's funny because Nashville not only has been in the 1880s and the early 1900s, and it still is an after-hours town. Okay.
Right.
And when you think about things that happen after hours, you know, I always say nothing good ever happens after 1 a.m. But and Nashville doesn't shut down at 1 a.m. It certainly didn't shut down at 1 a.m. in the 1880s and the early 1900s, and it doesn't shut down at 1 a.m. today. It's still a fun city, and it's always been a fun entertainment city. It's always been a travel city. Tourism has always been one of the biggest business in Nashville, even in the late 1800s, in the early 1900s, you know, and the men's quarter was for the wealthy travelers, and it was thriving morning, noon, and night. Think Vegas. Think early day Vegas, before Vegas. This street was the Strip.
The Strip.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it did. It had these classy, very beautiful buildings with beautiful lights and treated people to the nines. And, you know, so you would go in the first floor, and that would be the saloon on these places. And I'm going to give you some of the names of these places, too. The first really prominent men's quarter saloon, gambling hall, and bar was called Utopia.
Okay. Okay. I like that for an 1800s name. That sounds real 1996-ish.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like when Romeo and Juliet was made into some like crazy movie with the guns and Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. Never mind.
Exactly.
That was some
exactly
stuff. I hated that movie. The other famous saloon, bar, gambling hall, and was called the Climax.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding.
Wow.
It's not a joke.
These names, I swear to you, don't sound 1800 at all. They literally sound like dirty 1980s, 1990s fun bars.
That definitely sounds like Times Square in the late 70s, early 80s. That's for sure.
Like you see men wearing fishnet shirts walking up and down.
Oh, yeah,
street.
with their boom boxes, or you got the big collars out and the gator boots. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, they were wearing boots, but not that kind of boots. So, and the most prominent and probably nicest, best little house in Nashville was a place called the Southern Turf. And that is going to be the focal point of our investigation. So it's a cold gray morning in February 1916. We have a 64-year-old bartender named Ike Johnson, and he has a pistol in his hand. Now, at this point in time of his life, he is at the end of his business as a saloon owner, and it's eviction day, for lack of a better term. So we got a bunch of police officers trying to remove him and his belongings from the building. But what happens next is where the mystery really begins, because as some will report, including the newspaper, he uses that gun and puts it to his head, and then his life is extinguished. But was he really the type that would do something like that? Or was he more of a fighter type? So let me tell you the story of Ike Johnson, and let's see if we could find out why he haunts. So the Turf was a saloon, a brothel, a gambling hall, and it became the most popular establishment in Nashville. He was well liked by many, including famous distiller Jack Daniels. Despite his popularity, Ike ended his life, though, with a self-inflicted gunshot in his third-floor apartment right in the Southern Turf. His death was definitely unusual, considering he had lived there for 20 years, and the building had been praised for its lavish gambling and extracurricular activities, if you know what I mean. However, after 20 years, there was a new law that was basically being enforced that created prohibition of alcohol, and they were definitely starting to crack down on the gambling and those extracurricular activities. So the Southern Turf did fall into disrepair and eventually was sold to the newspaper, the Tennessean. Despite Johnson being prevented from selling alcohol at the Southern Turf, he did have plans with developers to open up a new gambling hall and saloon a few blocks over in what was called Bootleggers Row. But on the day of his eviction, the police came to remove him from the premises. But it's unclear whether he ended his life in front of them, or was he perhaps murdered? Some say that Ike still haunts the Southern Turf building to this day, with reports of sightings and even a tourist photograph allegedly capturing him looking out of his apartment window. So when Ike Johnson had that .38 caliber special in his hand and he did what they say he did, it's probably the end of one of the most colorful periods that we'll ever see in Nashville.
Wait, so his death literally shut down the whole like red light district of Nashville?
Yes, his death. Well, and there's a reason for that. Because Nashville had already started prohibition 11 years before it became a federal law to stop the sale of alcohol.
Oh, that's whack.
Stores. Yeah. Well, that's what's hilarious, because all the politicians were going to the men's quarter, but they were getting pressured by their wives. And so
right.
It was funny because government really was trying to take over, that's why they did prohibition to begin with, because, it was considered unruly and unholy, to do these types of things. And alcohol leads to gambling. And a lot of people were mad because they would either get in trouble with their wife for being on the third floor, which is where it happened, or they would lose all their money because they just got drunk. And then they would gamble it all away. And of course, when politicians or people lost their money, they're like, well, I'll show you. And then they were like, I'll take your liquor license away. And so they did. And also a man that ruled with an iron fist. In fact, even before he was given the keys to the kingdom of the Southern Turf, he was constantly battling and beating up people that were pro-prohibition at the time. In fact, they started arguing for prohibition laws in the 1880s, and Ike punched out somebody on the floor of the Tennessee House at the state capitol. And he got 10 days in jail and a $50 fine. So this man was...
Ike sounds like a badass, first and foremost.
100.
So he's having fist fights on the floor of the Capitol, paying $50 fines, serving 10 days in jail, and for some reason, he unalived himself?
He unalived himself. Well, that's what they're saying.
Inside of the bar?
Yeah, well, so that's where the mystery begins. But let's just show you. Here he is. This is my friend Ike Johnson. So why am I telling you this story? Because this is a show called Why They Haunt. Obviously, the circumstances around his death are a mystery, but also there have been multiple sightings of this man. Look at this picture. This man looking down his apartment window, because he lived at the Southern Turf. So he lived on the third floor that overlooked Cherry Street. And that's where apparently he unalived himself. And where he unalived himself is where now there is multiple sightings of him looking down as if he were still living there. So what is the rationale or the reasoning behind him unaliving himself? Did he leave a note, a letter? Did he tell anyone? No, it's like, what if you're the man of the city? Yeah,
and you're running, you have the most prominent location that politicians, relevant people, rich people, sailors come in and frequent. You the man,
right? Why would you take that route? Well, so by 1916, prohibition was in full effect. And business went from this. It's like prohibition is like YouTube.
Right.
And they demonetized old Ike.
Mm-hmm.
And Ike was very upset. But not only that, his beloved building was being taken away from him because it was seized by the city, and the city sold it to the paper, the same paper that wrote this article. So,
wow. Okay. So business got bad. He probably couldn't really afford to pay the bills anymore. The city steps in, do what they do, take his building, and they sell it to the newspaper.
right. Exactly.
Wow. So it's almost like, as an entrepreneur, I understand how that feels. You putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something, building it from the ground up, it becoming uberly successful. You're reaping the benefits of it, only for someone who had nothing to do with the success, the building, the sleepless nights, come in and just take your stuff. Like, that'll make you go all the way to the end behind some stuff like that, man.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is like a captain of the ship, and he was willing to go down with his ship. But he was not a man that you would have thought would have gone down with his ship, if you know what I mean.
He seems like the type of guy that would have went out fighting as opposed to giving up.
Exactly. And I mean, there are multiple. If you just type in Ike Johnson and Tennessee between 1880 and his death, you will find multiple times where he was fined and arrested for assault and battery. I mean, this guy was a fighter. Okay. So for him to just give up at the age of 64, I have a tough time believing that that's what happened. You know, I'm not going to go into the coincidence thing because I don't feel like this was a coincidence. I mean, it certainly was possible that he did do what he did, but he did make some enemies along the way, specifically on the floor of the house. As I've told you, he was not a politician's friend, let's just say. And if there's somebody that could off somebody, politicians have that kind of power.
Yeah, real house of cards.
Yeah. So here's some stuff that I found digging deep, including 24 hours before his death. Ike Johnson had a conversation with the editor of the Tennessean. Mr. Johnson asked a favor, a thing he did not often do. This is what he said. When your paper leased this building, you said some mighty nice things about me. You may have occasion to say something more of the building and of me, but don't throw any more bouquets at me. It is not good for a man to live as I have lived, and it is not right for you to throw bouquets at me.
So you speak late 18, early 1900s way better than I.
Yeah.
What the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, he was starting to get a little kooky. It seems like he's depressed.
Don't throw no bouquets at me now.
Yeah, that's the thing. It seemed like he was depressed. For sure, he's losing his home to a newspaper, and it's no longer the nicest building in all of Nashville. By the way, I have a Yelp review from 1904.
Okay.
Yeah, did you know Yelp was around back then?
I did not.
Yeah,
I did not. I thought it was called Yippee.
Yeah, it was called Yelp, believe it or not. And Yelpy. So right here is the description of the Southern Turf when it opened. With a mahogany finish, while brass, onyx, and marble were lavishly used in the fixtures and decorations, in no building in the city can be found in better sanitary and ventilation arrangements. The windows are of ground glass, while the lavatories are constructed of marble throughout the building.
It said it was sanitary and ventilated.
Mm-hmm.
So it was clean and not funky.
Yeah, because most of those.
And that's how you want your brothel to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Are you suggesting that that's what it was from the third floor above?
Hey, listen, man.
Because I didn't say that. I just might have implied it. That's all I'm going to say.
Hey, listen, I'm reading what you. I'm picking up what you're dropping, Mark.
Yeah, because I'm going to have to do it that way. So, but yes, this would have been, again, the nicest in the city. Kind of like that movie with Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds. It was called Best Little House in Texas. It was from 1980. I mean, the Dolly Parton, gorgeous. Burt Reynolds, I mean, the man. I mean,
Gorgeous.
look at me. I look like Burt Reynolds. You know,
You're like a mixture. You're like if Burt Reynolds had a baby with The Rock.
That's right. That's right. 100.
That's who you would be.
And well, actually, I am that child. I am, and that's Jack Black. So that's what we get.
Right.
We got Jack Black. When the Brock and Burt Reynolds put the thing together, we got Jack Black. So yeah. So the Southern Turf was a fancy schmancy place. Guess what? It's still standing. Out of all the buildings,
to this day,
yeah, it's still there. So this is why we're talking about our good friend Ike, because it is said that Ike is still standing in his third floor apartment looking down. And I will just, if you don't believe me, let me show you pictures that have been taken. There's a guy's face right here in the window. At least that's what could be suggested. But remember...
So, but is the building that's currently there, is it still called the Southern Turf?
Yeah, they call it the Southern Turf building, but it's actually now a restaurant. But here's a recent picture of it. And this is Ike's third floor apartment, which is the middle one. The top floor would be the fourth floor.
And I got to say, man, the name Southern Turf might be the coolest name I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
That's a really cool name.
So this is Utopia, Climax, and Southern Turf. From left to right, you have the Southern Turf with those beautiful windows and ventilation. You have the Climax in the middle, and you have the Utopia, and these all stand today.
Have you visited any of those places?
Yes, sir. And I'm going to take you there because I think we need to investigate the street in general. But like the alley between the Southern Turf here, you see that down the street down there. So it's called Banker's Alley because there was actually a bank across the street from the Southern Turf, across that alley. And there actually it was a Wells Fargo then in the 1880s and the 1900s. And it's a Wells Fargo now. Isn't that neat?
Hey man, that's one thing about Wells Fargo, man. They stay consistent.
They are. Their branding hasn't changed at all either. And the stagecoach is still there. No. But I don't call it that. I call it Undertaker Alley.
Oh, wow. Either you watched a lot of wrestling or a whole lot of people died in that alley.
Well, both. I envision a man dressed much like The Undertaker in wrestling, in black with that hat, coming around in his stagecoach with his horses, and he was picking up bodies because if you recall, there were a lot of people still dying of syphilis and other STDs at the time, mainly women, and these were still women that were brought in, and they were still living out their days, and not just the Southern Turf, but also in the Climax and in the Utopian. But when they died, they were kind of Jane Does. And so what they did with them is put them out kind of like, you know, when you go to New Orleans and if you ever are up early at 6 a.m. and you're watching them clean up Bourbon Street.
Yeah.
Kind of the vision I'm seeing here of what they were doing. And so the Undertaker, who basically his studio or cremation area or his whatever it's called was just a block north, he would literally come and pick up the bodies.
So he would literally be doing like sweeps, morning sweeps every day, collecting any bodies that were thrown out over the course of the night and then disposing of them in any which way that he saw fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. Think about how many people, women specifically, might have gone missing, left, unalived in any type of way. And like their families don't know anything. They were never found, no records. Oh man, I guarantee that alleyway or street is just festering with paranormal activity. Cause that's not only residual energy, it's the angst, it's the, you know, the just all the negativity, it's murder, mayhem. Like, it's a lot, man. It's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, just sitting there. And that's why I think Ike is still kind of watching over the area.
So then who do we feel like if we don't feel like Ike did it to himself, who do you feel like Ike got into it with? Who are our suspects other than, okay, he got into a fight on the floor of the Capitol. I'm sure there's probably other seedy guys coming in and out of the location, right?
Yeah, a lot of people. So there are a lot of people named in his will, including Jack Daniels, by the way, which is fascinating. So he wrote a will very shortly before he passed. And during that, in that will, he states that my debt should be paid and then all the money should be left to my brother. And that was literally his only family he had. He had never married. He'd never had children. His mom and dad had since passed. And all he had left was his brother. So he left his whole earnings to his brother after all his debts were paid. And Jack Daniels was actually on that list. He owed Jack Daniels $1,500 at the time of his death.
In the 1916.
This was 1916. And
what is it, in everyone who's listening? Let's do that calculation. What is $1,500 in 1916 in comparison to 2023?
Well, I come prepared to our shows,
wow.
and I definitely Googled it. It was $42,000. So
people have done way more to people for way less money.
Yeah. Well, I'm not suggesting Jack Daniels killed him.
That's what I'm hearing you saying. That's what I heard you say.
There were like a lot of people on this.
Are we at Why They Hunt putting it into the atmosphere that Jack Daniels could have potentially carried out a hit for a $40,000 money owed to him?
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Is that the title of this video?
I am definitely Jack Daniels murdered. Well, here's the list of people that he owed money to.
His brother was left with about $25,
maybe 5 cents,
and a high five.
Yeah, he probably liked to drink and a lot. But you also got to figure he was a bar owner, and Jack Daniels was just getting it started. And it's very well known that Jack Daniels and a man named George A. Dickel, when they were creating their whiskey back then, they were bringing it from their distilleries to Cherry Street and putting it in the finest bars in Nashville. So Jack Daniels was very well known to have been selling his whiskey at the Southern Turf. And I believe George A. Dickel actually owned the Climax and the Utopia. So that's where Dickel would have sold his whiskey. So there was a rivalry there, too.
You think maybe our guy maybe got fronted some whiskey and didn't pay for it and didn't re-up and give him his money back?
It's interesting because bootlegging was very popular, right away. And these places stayed open, these bars, even after the prohibition laws came into effect, because you really could just bribe a police officer or a government official, because and you probably had some dirty photos on them, or whatever the equivalent of that would have been back then. You definitely had dirty laundry. You definitely had a gambling debt, probably, or two. But then again, you had these nasty people that would be like, "Nah, you tricked me." They always blamed the whiskey, of course. That's a country song. Blame the whiskey. But anyways.
Okay.
It went just like that. Yeah.
That sounded like it.
Yeah. So these are a list of...
Is that Garth Brooks?
So these are some people. These look like, there's a guy named TJ Mooney who is on this list. But then, you have, these people like the brewing company. So that would have been the beer that was served at the Turf.
So how much in debt was he when it was all said and done, probably?
Oh, I'll do the adding. I'll add it quickly. 42. 50.
Are you counting all this in your head?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
50, 64.
Mark Einstein.
73. 80. Oh, my God. That's $100,000 in debt. 2,000 again. Oh, man. Oh, so it's well over $10,000 in debt, which in today's world, which we know 1,500 is probably 42,000. So he was probably in today's dollars about $500,000 in debt at the time of his death.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So he couldn't have had that much for his brother to pay off his brother probably didn't even pay off all his debt.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to look up. Maybe somebody at home would look that up. So needless to say, there were very powerful men who definitely had an interest in getting back at old Ike. And then, of course, he had many people angry at him. He was arrested for a fight for beating up multiple gamblers all the time just because they were considered spotters, which, as you know, are people that like look at cards, and then kind of tip the hat like, hey, he's got a good hand and stuff.
Cheating.
Yeah. So, I mean, he would, if he caught somebody doing that, he'd break their arm. And then he'd pay the $50 fine and call it a day, So,
because that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So he couldn't have paid this debt back because he was too busy paying $50 every time he broke someone's arm. So,
that's intense, man.
Yeah.
So I guess it's up to us to kind of put the pieces to the puzzle together.
Yeah.
And see if we can maybe get in contact with the gentleman to see if maybe the story's true. Either he did it to himself or someone else did it. For whatever reason.
Well, and also, I mean, listen, if I have a theory and if somebody other than himself took care of himself, I would have guessed eviction day came and there would have been 4 or 5 police officers banging down his door, which we know is what happened.
Right.
Here's what we know happened. It was eviction day, and about 4 or 5 police officers were sent to remove Ike and remove his stuff from the building. But it's very, very possible that Ike was like, I'm not going. And it's very, very possible that somebody had a .38 caliber and somebody put it to his head. Very possible.
Okay.
And then, or Ike also, it's very possible maybe just wanted to not go down without a fight. He might have had that .38 caliber in his hand, and it might have been pointed at these gentlemen that came to remove his stuff and himself from the building. Or, it was just at that moment, it was like, pow. So not really sure what went down. But right now his legacy is he was a very charitable man, a very odd man, as the paper called him, and somebody that ended his life abruptly. So that's his legacy.
I look at it both ways, man. I feel like it's just either way that story went, it's just kind of sad. If he did do it to himself, you have the story of a hardworking man that built something from nothing, who had everything taken from him, and he just couldn't take it anymore. That's sad. Or on the other hand, you had someone that built something from nothing, and you had envious people who wanted to take it from him.
Right.
And did.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like in the end, it's just like, oh, Ike lost.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of people that played a lot of seedy games, man, like ex-drug dealers, like the gentleman of BMF. And these people that get caught and they end up serving 30, 40 years or even dying early.
Right.
It's just like in that game, it's just like it comes with it. And most people would rather have had it
right
and lost it early than to never have had it at all.
Yeah.
So you get somebody, you know what I mean, that live these fast lifestyles, getting a lot of money, a lot of attention, a lot of fame. And yeah, it doesn't last that long. But then you also get people who never will experience anything close to that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know. Even Kobe Bryant, I read in the article, he was like, he didn't feel like he was going to live long. He said that he didn't want to live long. He wanted to be almost like idolized, like a martyr almost.
Wow.
Like remembered.
Huh.
And you think he died, early 40s, but the things that he accomplished in his life is just almost like, I don't know, man. I just think about that sometimes, man.
Yeah.
It's just like some people will never, and they will live a whole long life. A person will live 100 years and never accomplish near the things that some people accomplish who may pass away in their 30s. So is it worth it? Like, how does that person feel? How does Tupac feel? How does Marilyn Monroe feel? How does James Dean? Like, how do all these people that died early but lived these crazily fulfilled lives? Like, you know what I'm saying? Was it worth it? Was it worth it?
Maybe then Ike did do what they say he did because he had lived 64 years. And in that time, he lived a very full life in the most exclusive saloon gambling hall in the city of Nashville, where he was born and raised. So definitely an interesting case to go look at. But the thing is and I think I just want to spend some time just before we go, just looking over these haunted photos event. So here is one of the far building of the turf. Right now, you see 3 stories of the turf. Do you see anything in these pictures, Dalen?
Oh, wow. Yeah. This picture where you see the window, it's like a whole person staring out the window. There has to be somebody in that window.
It's possible. It's possible.
Like somebody like that works in there. Like, that's a whole full figure of a person peeking out the window.
And yeah. Well.
And then in this 222 photo, you see the reflection of someone.
Right.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. You see a face in the bottom right. Okay. All right, Mark. You got some real solid evidence with these photos, man. So that lets me know that it makes me feel like whoever's in there is still in there. Somebody's in there. Now, if it's Ike, that's still up for debate. Yeah. But why would it not be, though?
No, yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, there were a lot of seedy characters that have been in that building. But, the fact that we know for a fact 100% that Ike died in the 3rd floor apartment.
Yeah.
We know that for 100%. I would be on the side of it's more than likely that the man ended his life very rapidly, I guess is the way we.
So you think Ike did it himself?
I think that is the best guess. However, it's definitely possible because he certainly had enemies, and he certainly definitely loved the Southern turf.
Yeah.
And there certainly were men coming to get him and remove him. And he was definitely a fighter. So I don't know what the circumstances around his death were. To me, they ended a little abruptly. But maybe he thought there was nothing left for him. I don't know. So I think we need to go. What's that?
No, I'm saying I think that's interesting, man. I think that gives us a solid perspective to go to for our investigation. Like, if he did do it himself, why? You know what I'm saying? What was the driving force? What drove those emotions and that energy? And are those energies still inhabiting the place now? Because, like, why are people still seeing you? Are there residual actions? Are there residual hauntings going on? Is your energy trapped because of the seediness of you know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of great questions for us to kind of go into this investigation with.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe he just wants to be there. Maybe he did literally never want to leave.
Right.
Like, I mean, God's at the heaven gate. He's like, yo, Ike, you were actually not a bad dude. You can come up. And Ike's like, nah, man, I'm good. I'm going to
chill at the Southern turf,
man. The turf's still rocking. Well, and look, I mean, how many ghosts are lurking among the Southern turf? Because I truly believe, and I can't wait to get there. We'll talk to Ike individually, but I think we also need to go down to that alley in what I call Undertaker's Alley and see what else is going on there, because I truly believe that might be one of the scariest places, And then also we should try to see if we can get a glimpse of Ike while we're there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, maybe we can, because it's on the 3rd floor. I doubt that they let us go in. Maybe we can break out the drone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is what we have the drone for.
That's right. Not just to make beautiful shots in movies. Like, it could be used in our. What we should do is we'll put the drone. Okay. So, yeah, because everybody's photos from the street. But what we should do is kind of like circle the drone around the building.
Yep. I like where your head is, Mark. Floor. I like where your head is. What if we can get an amazing, like the best capture of Ike that anyone's gotten?
Oh, my God. You were talking about awards, right? You know, it wasn't Shark Week really didn't hit its mark until they got that drone and the shark to come bite, you know, the drone. Like,
Yeah.
And when they got that shark coming out of the water in the drone, what if we become the first paranormal investigators to get a shot of a ghost on a drone?
That's what we're. You know what? Let's just end this podcast now.
Okay.
Because we can't do anything
That's a
better than
wrap.
that.
That's a wrap.
You can't give nobody anything better than that. That's what we're
That's a
gonna.
wrap.
That's what we're gonna set
This
out
is
to
the
do.
second episode, and we're gonna go and get Ike on film in the drone.
We're gonna
Wrap.
put a ghost on a drone.
That's a mic drop. We're done. We'll just be like,
That sounds like a
nothing else
movie.
to see. Yeah.
They got snakes on the plane. We got ghosts on the drone.
Yeah. All right. So we're heading out tomorrow, and I'll take you to the southern turf, and I'll take you. We'll also take a look more at Smoky Row because Birdie hung out there too, and I think it's cool for y'all to kind of walk the path of Birdie and now Ike. So
Yeah.
they lived during the same time. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, we'll see you on the investigation. So thanks for joining us.
Love y'all.
They